I'm stiff from my back, so it's taking me some struggling to get my feet past the knee pads that are in there. And there's no way that Velcro lasts very long in a cave. So I have learned the best way to keep those elbow pads on is with duct tape.
When was the last time that you put all this gear on?
Probably a year ago, maybe even longer than that. When you get to be an older person, you got to protect all the joints you can because they are all wanting to wear out on you. And that's it. I think this is a natural curiosity that's common with all mankind, to explore, to push the limits, to become pioneers, but certainly to go someplace that's no one's ever been before is just fundamental to the human nature. And when you get to do that in this day and age, when so much of the planet's been visited, it's a pretty rare opportunity to go someplace that no one's ever been before. All the passage in this cave was surveyed as we explored, so that each trip we were seeing virgin cave, something that no one had ever seen before. And that made it pretty special. That's the way to do it. So sometimes I'll just wander down here. Sometimes I'll have a light and sometimes I won't. Doesn't matter, as long as I don't go too far. And I just, and there I am. We knew there was caves on the property. In fact, that's the reason we bought the property. I wanted property that had caves on it. And I'd known that there was a cave on the other side of the hill that we now call Owl Cave. It's a short cave, about 3,000 feet long, and I'd been to the water sinks, the cliffs on this side. The water sinks cave was at the base of that cliff, and it was neat looking. It didn't go very far. It was only about 2,000 feet of passage in there, at least we thought of about 2,000 feet at the time. We've extended it since then. So right now, with the smaller caves we've got on our property and the bigger caves that we found, we're right at 10 miles of passages that we've got surveyed so far. I've created trails that connect the sinking streams and the waterfalls and the cave entrances and the bluffs and the rilling and all this stuff. And it's going to be just perfect, and it's already being used for science and for education, for people to come and understand what a karst landform is. It's in a park-like setting, and that's probably one of the more special aspects of it too. This place needs to be preserved. It's pretty special. And I can't just give it away because I've got descendants, and I can't do that. Now, once I have to leave or I die, I want a caving organization to own this. That will continue to have it open for science and for cave exploration. There's a lot of knowledge that's being gained here at this property.
I first went to a couple of those caves when I was a junior in high school in 1976. Phil didn't own them at the time. And so the old water sinks and the caves that are in that huge terminal sinkhole, I'd gone to a couple of times in high school. So I was very excited to come back, decades later and to meet Phil and have the chance to first of all, revisit a couple of caves that I'd been to when I first started going caving in high school in the 70s, but also to find out how interested Phil was in not just caves in general, but in all the science with the caves.
When I was an undergraduate student at James Madison University, I ended up doing a senior research project looking at this fossil reef exposure that was present in this cave on Phil's property. The reefs are right at the boundary between two major geological periods, which are called the Silurian and the Devonian, so that makes it about 420 million years old. So this is kind of at an interesting time period where there's actually relatively few reefs known that are made out of these stromatoporoids, and so it kind of fills in a gap that we had in trying to better understand what's happening in reef evolution across this whole interval of time. During that period of time, the whole eastern coast of North America was covered by what's called the Appalachian Basin. So it was underwater, it would have been warm, relatively tropical kind of marine conditions that really helped to promote the growth of things like reefs. But the Appalachian Basin didn't extend a whole lot further south from that location. So this is actually the furthest south that a reef is known from that particular basin. So it helps us to better understand how far south or north they were capable of living at that time. And again, that can reflect things like the local climate and environmental conditions that are controlling the growth of these reefs. Understanding modern reefs is really important for a marker or an indicator for things like climate change, because modern reefs are incredibly sensitive to things like changes in temperature, changes in ocean chemistry, and so on. And so sponges are still a part of modern reefs. We also have a lot of very deep sea sponges. So better understanding ancient reef systems, as well as all different types of ancient organisms, sort of helps to set a baseline for what is a normal amount of variation and what is sort of a normal response to things like major climatic changes, which have happened in many cases in the past. So by studying something that is even as boring looking as some of these sponges can actually be really important, because it tells us about the past diversity of this group of organisms and how they changed from things like fluctuations in temperature and sea level and so on.
When we constructed our cabin in 1989, I decided to keep just a simple log, spiral ring notebook, and just started making notes. January the 10th, 1998, the water sink's bottom has washed out. Nearly 4 inches of rain fell, and now there's a hole 17 feet deep at the entrance to the water sinks, with a 7-foot waterfall in the bottom. Now when the creek stops, we will investigate further and see if a cave can be entered.
It's what we call a terminal sinkhole in karst science. So it's a very active, very dynamic hydrologic system. It's a great example of that kind of dynamic process that we see with cave and karst terrains, because they're formed by water flowing, they're formed by water dissolving the limestone, and every so often we're reminded of that during a big rainstorm. Nature, I think, wants to fill the entrance back up from time to time, and nature will then want to open it up again from time to time, knowing that at any moment it could just close right up with sediment that's right now a mile upstream. In a big flood, that sediment could get taken downstream in a matter of a couple hours in a flood and clog it all up again. That's the nature of this kind of a geologic system. It's very dynamic. So when we have access to it, I'm very much appreciative of Phil's efforts to give us that access.
When we bought the property, I knew it was going to be pulling us out here on weekends, and it did. 24th of February, 1989. Arrived late last night at midnight and I woke to snow showers this morning, but it was sunny most of the time, temperature 28 degrees. After a great pancake breakfast, we started the survey of the Water Sinks Cave. But first, we decided to burn down in the bottom some of the old apple trees. In fact, it was so much fun, we spent the whole day doing that. But we had a lot of fun. It really brought us together.
It had always been a dream of my father's to own active cave systems, and thereby was kind of my dream too. Caving to me was something that I was born into. As soon as I could walk, I was going into caves and following my father around various parts of the country and so forth to further his need for exploration. So to me, it was just kind of always a part of my life, kind of inextricably tied together with just me as a human being. My father's exploration in caves has always been his passion in life. Became more than a hobby to him. It was something that he needed.
I'm not as agile as I used to be. Where's my head? Have been collecting some of the dust from all the explorations, and they're getting a little dirty. But the ceiling up at the top, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, it's got some really brilliant white helictites and translucent helictites. This ceiling along here for about 300 feet is just spectacular. I'm really glad it's so hard to get to because it would not be as pretty if it was more accessible. Going into the cave gives me, and this is very hard to explain, and I'm gonna try to explain it, but it gives me a sense of peacefulness, tranquility. I don't know what Zen is, but maybe Zen. It doesn't sound plausible to most people. They have to go into a cave to do something like that, but those of us who love caves, when you walk into there, it is restoring. It is very close to spiritual, if not spiritual. That might be the best word to use, is a spiritual experience. All right, it's not snowing yet. Yeah.
What's your very first thought?
That it's a dead end. It says so right here. My method of going through the cave, I can't step up high anymore. I have to rely on my seat of my pants a lot more than I used to, but I did it. I'm glad. Glad to see my cave again. Good boy. So, I've enjoyed that trip. I wish I could go in it again. I can't, your trip was probably my last trip. I didn't do too bad though. I got us in there a ways. I got us in there to tickle your fancy. Not only have I found a lot of caves, but to have found this one on my property is like a caver's dream come true. It's hard to get any better than this. And so I feel so fortunate to have discovered it, so fortunate to have had all these years of exploration and the fellowship of the cavers who helped me survey it and explore it. In a short distance inside the helictite cave entrance are 2 urns placed in a ceiling alcove. These will eventually be the receptacles of Charlotte and Phil's ashes to watch over those who enter the cave.